Hey guys, this is Zim from Shrey Gaming, and doing another map video on kind of a basic map awareness. So in this map, or actually in this battle, I'm driving the Tier 9 uh, British Heavy, the Conch, and there's a few things that you see a lot of players do that you oftentimes kind of I get why you do it, but one of the biggest things in World of Tanks is the initial start, the initial where you're going to go with your tank, right? And where it's most suitable, best to play, biggest chance of damage, all that kind of stuff. Um, and usually it's something you have to decide rather quickly when you first start out. The problem is that a lot of maps have these points where where tanks are spotted, and you know where the tank's going to go, and there's a chance you're going to see some tanks, and you're going to get a chance to shoot at those tanks, right? So with the with the uh, mediums out in the fields, typically that's going to be you have a tank's going to start showing up on the G and H line out in the field, and people have a tendency to stop and to shoot at those tanks. You see it on Mountain Pass. You see it on Lakeville. Where tanks cross going to the corridors to fight. Uh, People have a tendency to stop to shoot there, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. It's the what's you stop, take a shot, whatever. But the problem is people have a tendency to all stop and all shoot. And I know most of you try to know about Mountain Pass is notorious for it. You have the valley in the middle, and both sides have to cross, and light tanks like to get in there and spot those tanks as they're crossing. And almost every time I get into a game on one of those maps, either on either side, is you'll see a light tank spot, and then the whole team will stop and shoot, right? And there's no, they'll literally sit there for however long, just waiting for a shot. Well, the problem with that is that it ends up your team loses that strategic or that tactical positioning early in the game, right? Every map has a place on the that's a strong position to fight from, and if you don't take those positions, you're immediately set back. Your chances of winning goes down, and like the Lakeville, that's another perfect example. Um, the light tank goes up in Center Road, lights, and then you have a bunch of tanks shooting there. Or if the enemy light tank's on the middle road, all the heavies trying to get into town will stop and shoot, right? Which is okay. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with taking a shot, but it's the problem is that the people stop and sit there and watch. They might wait 2 minutes and never see that light tank again, but they'll sit there and stare at that spot. You know, it's almost a mine from that movie with the dodos, right? Uh, it's that kind of play that does not help to win a game. And this map has some of that, especially when the tanks sit on the 4-5 line. And you'll see in this game how they have a tendency to sit on the 4-5 line, waiting for something to show up out in the field, right, and not getting into position to take the the spots that they can play their tank from. Right? So, in that vein, I typically, if I'm in a fast heavy, I like to get into town and get into the church here. It's a good strong position to play out of. Gives you lots of avenues to shoot from. And if I have a speedy heavy like the Conch is, I like to get inside this church or whatever this kind of building this thing is here, and get in here and play this in this nice little nook here, because it gives you multiple angles to shoot from, not just what's in front of me, but to my left, to my right, and I can back up to the other side of the church and shoot down the E line and anything that's coming up, from the other side. So it's a good strong spot for me. Now, as I'm playing this, you can see that this, what I call over here, this bunch of heavies, I call this the heavy funnel. And you see this a lot on especially city maps. You have a bunch of heavy tanks, and they have a tendency to kind of like a herd of cattle to bunch up and go to one line, one positioning, or one place to shoot from. And it happens on a lot of maps. You get Himmelsdorf, you get Tank Alley, you get 7 tanks on Tank Alley, blasting away at each other. And there might be only 2 on the other side, but there's 7 on our side, and they're sitting in there all in this one little funnel. And you see this on almost every city map. Is you have that tendency. North America is another one where they'll sit on one line, one street, and they don't spread out. So you get this massive chunk of firepower all in one, but you have a very narrow little place to shoot. And this leads to, in my opinion, why a lot of times teams lose. Is if you have this, like I said, what I'm calling the massive tank funnel, this heavy funnel right now. I'm at E6, right? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 heavy tanks right in that one little area right there, and they're not, you know, they're not. They're not spread out. So I have a 57, behind me, a 121 that's kind of playing back and forth here. Their team is kind of clustered right in front of me, but they seem to, as you watch the video, they'll move out a little bit. But that tank funnel that I'm talking about on my team stays, and this is the problem. Is that becomes the center rotation of this map. And I've talked about other videos. If you as you watch a game progress, almost all maps, the battle rotates, either down, from the 1-2 to the 9-0, and you'll watch this as we play here, as the game progresses, what happens, and you can already start seeing it now. We have our what I would consider the strong side, which would be from the heavy funnel out to the one line. This is the heavy funnel. Now, at this point, if I would have had some of this heavy funnel, maybe out here with the 57, I wouldn't have the 32 running on me. So it's that heavy funnel is almost wasting on now. So the M1's now joined them. The 121 is kind of moving into that position too. So now you look at that, we have 2, 4, 5, almost 6 tanks sitting there in a tight little bunch with me and a 57 off here to the side, and you'll see you'll see the enemy team kind of figure this out. They'll see, okay, we have a large chunk of green tanks there and green tanks in the fields, and you'll see them start to rotate here, right? They'll start rotating their tanks, because they're going to start pushing on the side that's got the least amount of resistance. And so now you've seen the heavy funnel get bigger yet. I mean, it's really starting to compact, and you can see the red team. They've got a nice line. They've spread out. They've already started pushing tanks down the 9-0 or down the 9 line, and this right here is literally a recipe for disaster. The tanks out in the we have a video on counting tanks. You got 4 tanks in the fields, and they now see where the Action 10's at. They see where the pilot's at. Those tanks now are just starting to push the 59 Patton, and obviously the T44 is sitting out here too. They're just starting to push out on the enemy tanks. Now the IS-3 has finally broken away from the heavy funnel, and so has the M1, but they've moved out into a position where they're going to get literally wrecked by the red team that has started to rotate here. And this, like I said, this is the point where it's really going to start to. Now, this is one of those deals. You need to beware of when that tipping point is, right? So when that map starts to flip and the tanks start to move in this rotation, that you need to, if you're the point where the rotation is going to happen, or the point where you're going to get overrun if you're on the weak side versus the heavy side. I'm not on the, I'm not really on the heavy side, but I'm not really on the weak side, but I don't have any support. And this was my fault, not recognizing this right away. I should have probably a good minute ago vacated. I mean, I probably would have took some damage trying to get out of there, but I might have lived a little longer, right? So yeah, it's even with the amount of games I have, I still kind of get just looking down my reticle and not paying attention to the map, and then that's kind of what happens here to me. Now, like I said, they've switched uh, the map is rotated, and you can see the red starting to push. They're pivoting on that heavy funnel, and this is what happens to almost every heavy funnel you get. Now that they're only playing one or two streets, and that's all they're working on. Now the enemy teams are moving around the funnel, and they're going to start getting all kinds of shots here. So this is, like I said, talking about the heavy funnel, talking about the map rotation, and this is the problem you get with with those tanks bunching up on one corridor of fighting, and being that it's not a very wide corridor, it's very narrow. You're going to watch this rotation as they come around. Now, for the fields, they have the tank numbers. They've counted. They are overrunning the fields finally, and they've won it. Now we're going to stop right here and look again at the map. This is one of those tank awareness things that I always preaching about. Making videos about it. What's going on, right? This is one of those moments in the game that you need, the counting of the tanks, right? Counting of the tanks, and we are down a fair amount of HP at this time, and they still have their 310s. We're down a 10. They have more 9s. We have more 8. They're up tanks, and this map, other than the lights have moved down here and the mediums have moved down here, realizing that at this point, the red team has moved past. They're moving into that rotation. They've overcommitted themselves to a point where they're not going to be able to stop cap. So at this point, these two light tanks, maybe even the Mutts or the 69, the three of them could have made it to cap. Now, it only takes 33 seconds to cap this out. There isn't a tank other than the T-49 that could have made it back to possibly reset the cap. And this is like one of those things that the whole map awareness thing that you have to understand is, like I said, as this battle has turned on that center point, the enemy's team, the red team, has moved so far past the point of no return that this is a perfect example of where they could have capped. Even though we're down tanks, we could still have won this game at this point. But they don't. This whether it was their decision to do it or they just didn't. You get that kill thing going on. I've did it myself before. You want the damage. You want to just see if you can stop it. Like I said, this was the only tank that had the ability to get back to cap, to stop cap, and this RU will finish him off. So after finishing him off, he still has time to get out of here and get back to cap. You can see me yelling it in chat. I'm yelling it in chat. They still have chance here. STIs, Mauschens, all of the red to the north have rotated. now. They're past that point that they cannot get back fast enough to stop a cap. I mean, if they could have, it would have been close. The 3 on cap still would have had a pretty good chance of winning it. This is that watching this rotation going on, watching them being the map aware of what's happening, and instead they decided to take it into town and start going after. Light tanks are great, but IS-4s, Moshins, 57 heavies, STIs, this isn't shit to fuck around with in a light tank. I don't care how fast you are. There's there's not a whole lot of room to run away and fucking around with these big heavies and a tank with 10 millimeters armor. No, it doesn't work out. So we've watched the full rotation now. We had the chance to win. They had a chance to cap actually too, but they had the hit points to actually pull this off. Being 10s, being super heavies in general, to go in and finish this off. So now we have a 9, 2 8s. They still have 3 10s, a 9, and an 8. There's not much you can do. So like I said, this is that whole map awareness, knowing when to cap, when not to cap, when to the heavy funnels, the stopping and taking shots when they're not needed, when you should have moved to a general direction, specific points in the map that would help you win the game, things like that. It's just a little video on try to understand a little bit of my thinking of where you need to be and how you need to get there to increase your chances of winning. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be putting up some more here shortly. So have a good night, guys.